Hello, and we're introducing a new type of top 5 because in today's context, the notion of value for money is getting very important. So it's a top 5 of watches under 5,000 US dollars. And to talk about this, we're with Michael Clerizzo, Wall Street journalist, watch columnist. So let's go immediately for your first pick.
Hello, Marc-Andre. How are you?
I'm pretty well, and
I'm really happy to hear that. We're standing out here in the Swiss sunshine. You notice that Marc-Andre, who's Swiss, has got about 5 layers on here, even though it's warm in the sunshine. Whereas me, I'm just out here in my little waistcoat, what do you want? Yes, let's talk about under $5,000, which is becoming an increasingly important segment of the marketplace, increasingly popular. And I think one of the ways the Swiss watch industry is combating the smartwatch, but even more importantly, one of the ways the Swiss watch industry is getting ready to combat what they expect, which is an onslaught from China, inexpensive but nevertheless high quality mechanical watches. So if we're thinking more long term, I think it's a very important segment for the industry, because remember, Nicholas Hayek, the great visionary, said you have to dominate every part of the marketplace. You cannot retreat into some luxury circle. So we're seeing a lot of activity in this segment, which is very good. And the first watch I'd like to mention is really one from a very long-standing brand, Longines. And Longines has released a watch called Heritage 1918. Now, right after the First World War, 1918, of course, is when we saw the massive switch from pocket watches to wristwatches start. Of course, I haven't made the switch yet. I hope you can see that. I'm still working on pocket watches. But a lot of the early wristwatches were pocket watches with lugs soldered onto them, sort of oval-shaped lugs. Many of them look very crude. Many of them look very rough. Longines has adopted that style, but kept it very elegant, made it very refined. And I think it looks very good. I think it's a beautiful watch, very well priced. I think it's $1,850 if I'm not wrong. And again, I appreciate the way they've turned what is a very rough design into a very elegant design. I think they deserve a lot of credit for that. Okay, another thing we want to look at, a brand which recently returned to the US, Tudor, and their Black Bay. Now, it's very important, this watch. Some people will say for the movement, but I would say for another reason. Of course, as we all know, Tudor is part of Rolex. Rolex is a brand that casts a long shadow. And there's a danger, I think, for some of Tudor's watches looking too much like a less expensive version of Rolex. But I think with Black Bay, they've really started to set up their own aesthetics, their own design cues. They're really carving out an identity for themselves, separate from Big Brother, who, as we know, has got such a dominant design out there so that everyone else copies it. And Tudor is moving away from that. It's doing it on its own. Really appreciate it. Thank you for agreeing with me. I feel so honored. He's saying I'm right. How about that, folks? He doesn't do that very often. Shall I move on?
please do.
Okay, I would also like to bring up Oris. Now, Oris is a brand a lot of us, particularly watch geek writers like me, we don't pay enough attention to. Oris, which, as you know, is in the German-speaking part of Switzerland.
Well, it's not far away from Basel. It's like 50 kilometers down the road here.
I've been there. And you have to go on a little train, and it goes up the mountain.
Yeah, it's really in the middle of nowhere.
It is in the middle of nowhere. That's a good place to make watches, in the middle of nowhere. Now, they make very solid, honest watches for not a lot of money. And the one I particularly like this year is the Carl Bashir Memorial Watch. Carl Bashir was the first ever African-American Navy master diver. There was a film made about him, Men of Honor, starring Cuba Gooding. He was also an amputee. He lost a leg in an accident, but he continued working, continued diving for the Navy. He's a really extraordinary man. And Oris has created a watch to commemorate him. It's about $2,800. It has a bronze case. I think it's a very handsome watch. And I think it's nice to have a watch honoring an African American who is not in the arts, shall we say, but honoring him for something else. And it's a very honest, handsome watch. And it's a very good deal.
And you have another pick that is quite interesting with also a little US feel to it.
Yes, I'll get to that one in a minute. I think we should mention first Mido.
Yeah.
Or I'm not sure if it's pronounced Mido or Mido. This is really a terrible thing. I know it's Spanish for I measure. Now, it's one of the entry-level brands within the Swatch Group. So, of course, they can call on ETA movements, and they are. But no one expects a brand at that price level to be doing their own movements. As you know,
No problem about it.
I have no problem. I have no problem about anyone. I wouldn't care if Patek or Rolex didn't use their own movements. This whole insistence on in-house is a break on creativity, is a break on entrepreneurship. We are wrong to insist on it.
And even sometimes also on quality.
And sometimes also on quality, yes. The other problem is that so many brands can't do it, that we are restricting them, and there's no reason for us to do that. We should delight in all the creativity and all the great blossoming forth of new watches that we're seeing. Why do we want to insist everyone spends a few $10 million just to get their own equipment so they can make their own movement? I mean, really. So, and also, what is an in-house movement? You know, there are some brands that would claim to be manufacturers but don't make their own screws. What? So what? You don't make your own screws, therefore you're not an in-house movement? All this is absurd, I think. That'll get a lot of emails coming in, believe me. Where do you see the comments you're going to get about that one? So Mido, though, is entering back into the U.S. market. Many of their watches are below the $5,000 mark. And I think, again, what they're doing is using aesthetics. Very interesting designs. Very, shall we say, again, handsome designs. And I think it's always worthwhile looking at these things. So I'm quite interested to see how Mido does back in the U.S. You know, obviously they're going to compete with Tudor a bit. And competition benefits us all. So, hey. Now, yes, my next watch also has a U.S. connection, but of a very different kind. Two guys in Denmark have started a company called REC Watches, R-E-C Watches. And they have taken every baby boomer's favorite car, late 1960s Ford Mustangs, and used a part of the Mustang to make a watch. Now, the name of the watch is the P-51, so called because it's related to the P-51 airplane, P-51 Mustang, and the same designer was involved in both. So what they have done is recycled, if you like, part of the dashboard of the P-51 Mustang. It's on the dial. The dial itself has a design very much like the dashboard of a Mustang. The case is big, chunky, as you would expect. Bear in mind, the Mustang was a muscle car back in the glory days of muscle cars when we had big engines and they were a lot of fun. You know, when they built cars like that, men did not need Viagra. That kind of laughed. He laughed even. That's good. Okay, now, the thing about this watch, though, that is really exceptional is it comes with a little card. You hold the card next to your phone, and your phone will start to play a video. The video of the actual car that has gone into making your watch. So we're seeing the watch as a kind of cultural archive. And I like that. I like that extension. As you know, I've always liked pop culture and watches. And I like that extension of the function of the watch. And it's very intimate, you know. It's a whole video right there on your phone.
And it's also naturally priced at a very decent position.
Yes, it's under $2,000, $1,450. And you can order it online from their website. In Denmark, of all places. Who knew Denmark was that cool? I mean, really.
Okay.
Anything else you'd like me to say?
No, that's perfect. So you see there, you have options under $5,000 US, and you'll probably get more and more options and possibilities in the near future. So, well, I hope you see, or well, now you see why Michael is a columnist, you see. He likes to tell stories, and he tells them pretty well.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. That's very kind of you.
So, this is it for our top 5. Thank you so much.